All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to your more regularly scheduled episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show. Back in our usual roles, it is your hosts, myself, Alex Baquero, and Chris Muppets Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. Everybody will understand that nickname a little bit later, although I'm sure some of our UK listeners might think that I called you a Muppet, and in which case they won't get it later on. Please go follow, like, rate, review, subscribe. We're going to keep doing our shout outs at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. And if you want a shout out, slide tackle into our mentions, into our comments, into our DMs. I'm never letting that one go, no matter how many years we do this podcast.
On all the platforms.
On all the platforms. Yeah, come. We do engage. Chris, how are you, my dear?
I'm doing pretty well. You know, coming off of a nice weekend for Villa. It was a great, much needed, I think, for the fan base result, and Villa looked much more comfortable than we had previously doing it. So I think all in all, a positive start to the week here, and hopefully things carry through as we head to Europe once again.
Very nice. I was wondering if you were going to ask me, or we were just going to roll right in. Chris is very excited to talk about 3 goals. He does not care about where I was this weekend or what I've been up to.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tell me a little bit about that, because we have not had much of a chance to talk, because I had a less busy weekend than you, but still a busy weekend. You know, children take up so much of your time. But you know, as my son's fledgling baseball career continues to try and get off the ground, I spend a lot of time doing other things on the weekend. How was your weekend, Alex?
Come on, Lil Walt. We need that scholarship.
Oh, yeah, that ain't gonna be it. Love you, buddy.
My weekend was solid. I visited the national embarrassment of a state of Texas. Had to go to Cowboys game last night, and you know what? Turned out to be at least exciting, if not great football. And I got to hang out with my friend Sean, meet his new girlfriend. That was delightful. Shouts out to Olivia. And yeah, I flew back today, worked, made dinner, and now we're here. So nice. I don't know. I feel like I continue to run at 100 miles an hour through everything that is happening in my life right now. So with that, let's run 100 miles through this intro and get right to the meat of this podcast, and that is the Fulham recap. Still got it.
Still there.
So, Chris, let's start with the lineup, because I actually have a question for you right off the jump. Usually I kind of run through all the players and all the changes. But one thing I noticed immediately was we were back to Tyrone Mings and Luka Dean in the back line. Mm-hmm. And to me, this could be indicative of Unai Emery taking a different approach in Europe than he does in the Premier League. And he would not be the first manager to do this. I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson most famously would talk openly about how United needed to be a little bit more conservative in Europe than they would in the Premier League, where they could go for it a little bit more just based on the talent that was out there. And I say that intentionally because it would almost seem like Unai Emery is bucking the trend and doing quite the opposite. He's going very aggressive in Europe with Pau Torres and Ian Maatsen, as opposed to more conservative in the EPL with Tyrone Mings and Luka Dean. Mings' injury we'll talk about later. Right. So, Chris, what do you think about that? Do you think that's what actually happened, or do you think that this is just normal squad rotation and kind of when the games fell out?
I tend to think the latter, but I don't think it's a bad idea or a bad thought from you. I think it's squad rotation, but it also would make sense, right? Because if just, I think the Sir Alex Ferguson point that you made is well taken. But if you consider the state of world football at that point versus the state of world football now, the Premier League is leaps and bounds from top to bottom the best league in the world. I'm not saying that all the best teams are in the Premier League, but from 1 to 17.
Sure, 1 to 20, the mean.
So it would make sense to maybe go a little more conservative in the Premier League than in Europe. But I think that there is a lot of comfort with Unai Emery and Luka Dean. So to use that specific player in this instance, he is or has become almost like a security blanket, I think, for Unai Emery, and he's a very consistent performer, very consistent player for the most part, especially over the last, I would say, 18 months to 2 years. And I think that while Maatsen has shown a lot of great flashes, and you can see the ability going forward that Maatsen has versus what Luka Dean brings, I think that Unai Emery is extremely comfortable penciling Luka Dean in the lineup for his first choice. And I think that in a lot of ways, this was a game where Villa had to get right, and they had to make they had to get a result, frankly. And that center back and left back pairing to Unai Emery, I think, seemed like the best option at the time, even if it was a little bit conservative.
That's fair. What I would add to that is that Villa are in a different European environment to Manchester United as well.
True. That's true. Yeah.
Even with the start to the season that Villa have had, I believe they are the betting favorites to win the Europa League right now. They are far and away the highest ranked team on Opta's power rankings table, things of that sort. So when Villa go to Europe, they probably expect to have a bit more of the ball. They're probably expecting to play a team that's going to sit in a little bit more. And, you well documented Bologna's struggles at the start of the season as well. So I think there could be a bit of, yes, playing for Europe, but to your point, like, it also is just playing the opposition and someone who Unai Emery expects to have less dominance over than Fulham, who I think are a Premier League team that we both regard very well. As we move up the pitch, Chris, I also want to ask you about the center midfield pairing. So Kamara gets a rest. I think that's understandable given the myriad different muscle injuries that he has had over the years. But what was interesting to me, and I'm not sure if you noticed this, Bogart and McGinn actually kind of flipped the side of the field that they were on. So McGinn, the more advanced defensive midfielder, was actually on the right-hand side where Kamara usually plays. And Bogart, the more defensive midfielder, was on the left where our more attacking Yuri Tielemans, John McGinn usually plays. I thought this worked. I thought that it opened up a little bit Fulham's defense. I don't know how much it took them by surprise, but it sure seemed like it did. And, in my opinion, this is actually what enabled John McGinn to get the long range strike that he did, because when he drives forward, he is driving naturally more onto his dominant foot to be able to shoot from distance. If he plays on the left-hand side, he can't necessarily do that. Did you pay attention to this, and do you think that it's something that we're going to implement moving forward, or do you think this is a very unique John McGinn wrinkle?
I think it's John McGinn specific. I think that what you just said is the point, and the reason that you saw the flip. McGinn's favored foot will naturally take him that direction, and I think that whether it was like we've talked about, nothing happens on the pitch or off of it at Aston Villa without Unai Emery having a say in it. So I don't think that this was something that the players did without permission or without discussing it with Unai Emery first. I don't think they said
no, of course, yeah. do not mean to imply that.
Yeah, right. No. And I'm just, but so what I'm saying is, I think it was something that Unai Emery and the team probably picked up on, that this is going to put us in a better position with Bogart on the right and McGinn on the left, rather than or did I have that? Yeah. All right. I want to make sure I said it. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. I had it backwards. So because of McGinn's favored left foot, and it worked. And Bogart, I thought, I want to highlight specifically, I thought he played extremely well. And I think you've got some notes in the later on in the game where you want to highlight a few things specifically, but I thought that may have been his best game with Villa so far. And he really was a standout player for me, and that's not something we've been able to say, I don't think, much about
Ever?
Lamar Bogard before, right? So yeah,
I
I
don't think
want
we've
to
ever
highlight
said
that
that before.
specifically because he was. I think he played the role exactly the way that he needed to, and I think he was a big part of why Aston Villa had a lot of success on the weekend.
Yeah, I had him in good points later on, but let's just talk about it right now. I don't even think I'm exaggerating to say I don't think he misplaced a pass all game long. But you saw a maturity and a level of composure in his performance that I don't think we've seen to date. You saw him receiving the ball under pressure in our own box and able to kind of wait for the challenge of I think it was Lukic at the time to draw a foul and give us the breathing space to kind of release the ball and get up and out. Made some nice drives forward with the ball, broke up play. So yeah, all around perfect performance for what we need from him as a deputy in either one of those central defensive midfield positions. I would say we can kind of be done with the right back, center back experiment with him. I
Yeah,
don't think that's where he's best positioned. And especially when you see some of the statistics coming out of Sunday, I think it's very clear this is where he is most comfortable on the pitch and hopefully where he plays for many a year for Aston
yeah,
Villa.
right.
And so let's continue moving up the pitch, Chris. And Evan Gasson continues to start, but also we get Elliott into the middle. What'd you think about both of those?
Well, I wasn't surprised to see either of them in the lineup. I think that based on what we know about Harvey Elliott, and Unai Emery, Emery's been an admirer of his. I think with Gasson, it's mostly that we don't have a whole lot of other options out there right now that we can put out at right wing. You can put Malen out there, but you also may need him to play striker, and probably will need him to play striker in Europe. So I think some of that is necessity, but I do think that Gasson looked a little bit better in this game than he did previous. So I think he's kind of growing into his role. Um, I I don't know. I think it's funny a little bit. I don't know from game to game exactly what Unai Emery is going to do with the midfield three because we're both short on options and we have a lot of players that kind of play the same position. So you're relatively stuck. But I never know exactly how it's going to shake out, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I wasn't particularly surprised to see the lineup the way it was. I was pretty pleased with the way it turned out, and I thought Emery pushed a lot of the right buttons in substitutions, and we'll get into that later. I think that with Gasson and Elliott specifically, we're going to need to take a little more time with each of them to see how they work within the team and within the system. I don't think it's like we've talked about a million times. I don't think it's something that's going to come right away and you're going to see instantaneous impact game in and game out.
Yeah, listen, with Gasson, I thought this was probably his best performance in a Villa shirt as well. You can see the incremental steps that he's making as he's getting closer to, I think, fully understanding what Unai Emery wants of him and where he can best support the rest of the team. So he was staying much wider, in my opinion, which is key. We've been talking about that for a minute. The need for width. He was not drifting in towards the field, completing a few more of his dribbles. I thought he defended well. Really seemed to press with intent, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Uh, Won some fouls, won some challenges, and put in a couple good balls into the box. And, as he continues to get a little bit more familiar with his teammates, he showed good awareness at one point when he was driving forward with the ball, wanted to release Ali Watkins. Ali was a few good yards offside and wouldn't come back on side. And I think Gasson was able to hold on to it until it was kind of kicked out for a Villa throw in. So I think great overall performance from him. Elliott probably a little bit more of a mixed bag, and that's why he was withdrawn at halftime. Just couldn't really seem to find the right pockets to get on the ball. And So with that, Chris, I guess let's jump into some of the match segments, and I don't know how many there kind of are for us to talk about since we've done so much on the team already. But let's start with this. Fulham started clearly on top right away. They scored in the third minute, and I think you texted me relegation is a real possibility almost immediately after that goal went in the net.
Yep.
And as happy as we are with the fact that Villa scored 3 goals, I do want to point out we're not going to get over jubilant. We're going to stay lukewarm with this. Fulham still were better for large portions of this game and large portions of the first half.
Yeah, especially the first half. I think Fulham were the better side. That I was very concerned that early goal was going to be like the dagger, and we were just going to be behind for the next hour and a half of because it was third minute, right? So you still had the entire game to play, but reactionary and just based on the way the team had been playing, you can understand why I didn't have a whole lot of confidence that Villa were going to be able to come back and not only get something out of it, but end up taking all 3 points. I was disappointed, not just because of how quickly they conceded, but that it was off another corner so early in the game. It's another recurring problem that we've had now for about the last season and this, right? Where corners have just been a real bugaboo for the team, conceding on corners. And at this point, you have the center back pairing that you want to defend corners. So because everyone would wonder, like, oh, would we be better defending set pieces and corners with Mings out there? Well, here we are. Mings is out there, Kans is out there. It's your best center back pairing for that specific purpose, and they still concede. So I don't want to hammer this point because I know that Villa went on to win the game, and that's the ultimate result and ultimately what's positive. But Villa do need to figure this out. You cannot concede on corners and set pieces so regularly and expect to have long-term success in the league or in Europe. So that was disappointing to me. I thought that
hold on, because since we don't want to pile on with all the jubilance of a win, let me add one more point on top of that. Villa can't keep conceding from set pieces and corners, but what I'll also add is that what has been a problem probably for the entirety of Unai Emery's tenure at Aston Villa is giving up high quality chances to the opposition. Fulham scored once, and Villa had 2 clearances off the line, one by Ezri Konsa after some poor play by Emi Martinez, and then another, I believe it was off another corner that Morgan Rogers headed off the line. So another universe, this is very close to being a 3-3 game because of the opportunities that Villa are conceding. That expected goals against continues to be through the roof for a team of Villa's caliber. So I just want to note that as well before you kind of move on to more positive points.
Yeah, and that's a great point. But to move on, as the first half went on, I thought Villa started to develop a little more of a concrete plan of attack and started to grow into the game significantly more. You could see that they wanted to trigger long balls early from Martinez, mostly in the first half, because I think of the way that Fulham were pressing forward. So it gave Villa an opportunity that we haven't really seen much in the league so far, because most everybody's been willing to sit back so deep and allow us to possess the ball. So I do wonder if that wasn't a tactical mistake by Fulham to bring players forward and give those longer ball opportunities. One of them ended up costing Fulham a goal, Watkins' first goal. So I do like the adjustment, at least from Villa, to be able to see that and take advantage of it, because that clearly became their first path to, or their preferred path to success in attack as the first half wore on. So I was pleased that they were able to find opportunities, even somewhat limited in the first half, but find opportunities to create scoring chances. And Ollie Watkins found the end of one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout by you about potentially a tactical mistake by Fulham. Villa still have not really been able to show an ability to break someone down playing in a low block. They got the goal off of a long ball when Fulham pressed high, got their other two in the second half when Fulham became incredibly open in the midfield. It felt like every time Villa got a pass and turned past one guy, there was probably a good 20 yards between the Fulham back line and their defensive midfielders. So I don't think that they were as tactically prepared as they probably should have been. What I also do want to note is the way that Villa are defending has switched over the past couple games, in my opinion. So Villa had typically been really for over a season now, but at the start of this year as well, playing in a bit more of like a mid block defensively. And one thing I lamented and really went after in the solo pod that I did a couple weeks ago was a need to press higher, to make the field shorter. If you can't be creative enough to break down a team in a low block, then you need to make turnovers high up the pitch and take advantage of the confusion. And I would say over the past couple matches, that's precisely what Villa have been doing. They've been pressing much more aggressively. You saw them really getting up into Fulham's back line. And I don't think that is just a one-off in Fulham's case. I think we have realized that we can't necessarily let teams have the ball and break us down. That obviously has accompanied a much higher line by Aston Villa. And so the only thing that I'll say before I get your opinion on the defensive changes is that this is something we spoke about 2 seasons ago when Villa were playing the ultra high line and catching all those offsides. And there was a really good tactical analysis done on ESPN that kind of said there's no logical reason why this should be working. Typically, Villa weren't pressing all that high. They were kind of sitting back and basically their top attackers and their defenders were within 20 yards of each other. And so they said, usually if you give defenses opposing time ability to pick their head up and look, the offside trap doesn't work because everybody can time their runs, time their passes, all that kind of stuff. But for some reason, it's working for Villa. Now they seem to have gone the more traditional route of we're going to play the high line and we're going to press effectively. So we're going to catch you offside. We're not going to let you pick up your head to pick out those passes. And by the way, we're going to create a bunch of turnovers that are going to create opportunities for us. You saw it most notably against Fulham when Ollie Watkins created a turnover, got the ball, and at least had a lukewarm penalty shout when he was knocked over and the ball was kind of taken away. So, Chris, defensive changes, good in your book? Should stick around?
Yeah, hang on. I'm getting a call. It's my friend. It's my friend Wiso. Wiso back. That's how I feel about the defensive changes. I love the defensive change because what's that? Oh, I was so my plan for that was to have someone's number in my phone as Wiso back. I just didn't have time to set it up. Bridge was going to call me from the other room, but I got one of my children to bed like 5 seconds before we got on here, so I didn't get a chance to set all that up. It would have been great.
Bravo!
I'd still give my joke a solid 7 out of 10, but I'm a harsh critic. No, but I love the changes because of what it does for the team. As long as you can execute that high line, and we know that Aston Villa are capable of executing the offside trap very well because they did it in extreme, like you just mentioned, extremely difficult circumstances. They were really operating as difficult as you can make it for yourself by essentially defending about 30 yards of the pitch in total, and then leaving a lot of space in either direction vertically. So I think that for a team that has been struggling to create attacking chances, the idea of moving to an aggressive press with a high line or with an offside trap anyway is a good idea to try and create easier chances to get the ball into the back of the net. Like I've said a million times, confidence is a huge part of anything, especially professional sports. So the more players see positive things happening, the better you're going to feel, the better they're going to feel, and the more confident they're going to play as the season wears on. So I think you could actually see that in a microcosm of this game, where in that space of time in the second half, when Villa got their goals in quick succession, you could see the Villa players almost playing like they were that they were. I mean, they played the way you would expect. They were the European giant, so to speak, in quotes, playing a team in the Premier League that has not reached those heights in some time. And it felt that way, and they played that way. And Fulham seemed to play that way as well. As the goals kept going in, you could kind of feel the air going out of their side. So that's why I think it's positive. It's a long answer to give you, but I think that tactically, it makes a lot of sense to change things up to try and generate attacking opportunities in a different way.
Love it. Last thing that I want to talk about tactically, unless you have anything else, is just the Emi Buendia for Harvey Elliott swap at halftime. What did you make of that? What do you think it brought to the team? Obviously, it paid instant dividends over the course of those subsequent 5-6 minutes. But just talk to me a little bit about that.
I was a little surprised, because I thought, even though Elliott struggled in the first half, I thought that Emery might give him a little run in the second to see if he had 10-15 minutes of play, to see if he could get his feet under him and make a difference. And I saw some of the reaction on Twitter, Villa Twitter, which is not a great place to be, just for the record, especially up till the result on Sunday. But a lot of the reaction on Villa Twitter was very negative, but then flipped very quickly. So I think two things. One, it was the right button to push, and it paid dividends. We can play the result there and say it was right. Two, it speaks to the faith that Unai Emery has in Emi Buendia, and he spoke about it after the game, that Buendia has become a player that is very important to the club at this stage. I think that you and I talked about it in the season preview, that Emi Buendia had a great preseason, and there was a lot of positive things coming from around him. And if we were able to get anything out of him, any kind of performance out of him, it'd be a bonus. And that looks like that at least is for sure happening as it stands right now. But he may become a very important piece of this team for this season going forward, because he's a stabilizing force to me. He's a player who's familiar. He's a player who's familiar with the club, with Unai Emery, with the system. And I think that sort of veteran leadership, so to speak, is helpful when the team is struggling for goals. And like you said, instant dividends for Buendia, and he played a great 45 minutes of football.
Yeah, I think if I were to use one word to describe Emiliano Buendia's play, it would be tenacity. And not to generalize, but it does feel very Argentinian, the way that he's so determined in how he moves about the pitch, the way that he presses relentlessly, the passion that he brings when he scores or contributes an assist. And Harvey Elliott, coming from the school of Jurgen Klopp, certainly doesn't lack in these capabilities in any way, shape, or form. You can't stay at Liverpool as long as he has in the time period that he has without being able to press and contribute and all that kind of stuff. But I think Unai Emery knew that he needed a spark, and like we said at the beginning of the year, Emi Buendia is going to play a sneaky big role for Aston Villa this year, and I think that manifested on Sunday. But I think that we've seen him continue to call on Emi as his first sub onto the pitch, for example, or starting in some certain areas to try and light a fire under some people. So I think we'll continue to see him play a role, as much as it may frustrate certain aspects of the Villa fan base.
Yeah,
Anything else?
No, I think that's good for at least for Villa's side of it.
The only other thing that I want to say in good points, I guess, as we move to good points, bad points, all 3 goals were stunners. Ollie Watkins, what touch? Didn't have to think about it, pop it up over the top. McGinn laser to the bottom corner, and even Emi Buendia to get the 2 touches in there and really toe poke it past everybody. Great body control. Those were goals that you love to see Villa score.
I like I mean, I like the Buendia goal because that's my favorite style of Villa and Unai Emery goal, to the byline and back.
Cut back to the penalty spot.
Yep. But I also like the McGinn goal quite a bit. Obviously, Watkins goes without saying. That was an incredible touch, and really nice finish. But I like the McGinn goal because I think one of the things that people, but other people as well, have become frustrated by is that Villa work the ball too much and are trying to almost pass the ball into the net, right? And it's nice to see someone take a shot from, even if it wasn't from way outside the box, but it was from just outside the box, and make the keeper move. If nothing else, you're on target. You're going to make the keeper move his feet and make a save, and at least get the juices flowing a little bit. And you never know what happens when you put the ball on net. So I was happy to see McGinn look up, recognize that he had a lot of space to shoot, and take the shot.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think those are both really, really great shouts. Bad points. Tyrone Mings is injured, and that just sucks.
Yep. And I was trying to find an update on it, but the only update I have is he's injured. I don't know. That was the exact words of Unai Emery.
Yep.
So that's all we've got right now.
So larger implication on the season. We are up to 16th.
Out of the relegation zone.
Level on points, only 1 goal back of Newcastle, who has also had some struggles to start the season here. We're out of the relegation zone, but Ollie Watkins scores in bunches, and he has scored his first now, so might be onto something there. And we've gotten a couple really good performances out of John McGinn, who, I don't think that either you or I, if we're being totally lukewarm about it, think that he is necessarily one of our best 11 players, but obviously someone who continues to be incredibly useful and important in the right moments, in the right games, and as the right utility piece.
Well, we've always talked about him as more than just his play on the pitch. Mm-hmm. He's the heartbeat of the team in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that I've mentioned specifically, I know, but is his ability to, off the pitch, know when to be goofy and know when to be serious. So I think over the course of a long season, that's an important thing, in terms of team morale and all that. But he's played extremely well. It was a great game for him on Sunday. I think the funniest reaction I saw to it, though, was from Paddy Power, the UK casino. They said John McGinn is the best player that doesn't look like a professional football player of all time, and I think they're probably right. But so great game from him again, and he continues to just do whatever is asked of him. He plays almost every role but striker at this point, for the club. So you can't discount that. Even if he may not be what you and I would call ultimately in the best 11, if everybody's healthy, but sometimes there's more to sports than straight ability or what we can measure.
I think that's well put. So
a little rambly.
From captain of Aston Villa, maybe he can be a ship captain as well, because we're going to take a little riverboat up the canals of Amsterdam to Feyenoord, Chris, and we're going to preview Aston Villa's Europa League game this Thursday. So far this season, Chris, they are first in the Eredivisie, 6-1-0. They have lost their first Europa League match 1-0 versus Braga, and they got smashed in Champions League qualifying actually by Fenerbahce, 6-4. They lost 5-2 in Turkey in the second leg. That first match versus Braga, pretty dull. Braga 8 shots, Feyenoord 5, 55-45 possession, just seemed very European, I suppose. Typical Europe night.
the total XG was like less than 0.8, I
I think
think.
I was gonna say it was definitely less than 1. Which is kind of weird for them though, because in the league, 15 goals, only 4 against, and that fairly is in line with their advanced stats. Something like 13 and a half expected goals for, 5.5 against. So, team that definitely knows how to attack, but also keep it kind of short up at the back. And just for a little kind of point of comparison, according to the Opta Power rankings, they are the 46th best team in the world. I don't know how much faith we put in this, considering that Villa are still listed as the 12th, but Bologna are 42nd, West Ham 47th. So that kind of gives you a sense of how Opta feels like Feyenoord kind of matches up against the rest of the teams in Europe that we might be familiar with.
Yeah, well, and Feyenoord's been a Europa and Conference League mainstay for a while now, and
Yep.
it's a difficult place to play. Their fans are intense, and it won't be an easy atmosphere. From a on the pitch standpoint, I regrettably do not watch as much Eredivisie as I used to. There was a time where I would watch quite a bit, but now, like I said, my children are older and demand that we watch K-pop Demon Hunters, and I have to take them to things like baseball and things like that. So I don't get to just sit around and watch soccer from all over the world all weekend anymore. But I did the same research, it looks like, as you, and their league stats are very good. Their first game in Europa, not so good, and really seemed like a snooze fest. And I just checked it real fast. The combined XG for that game was 0.7. So yeah, not exactly a thriller. So what do I think that says? And I'll ask you the same thing when I'm done, Alex. I'm concerned that what Feyenoord's going to do is sit deep and let Aston Villa possess the ball, which is what I would do, because until somebody shows me that they can break this down, I would continue to hit them with it. So I am afraid that it's going to be a struggle, despite coming off a good result with Fulham and 3 goals. I'm afraid that Villa are going to struggle to get the ball over the line, because I think Feyenoord are going to set up in such a way to make it difficult for Aston Villa to score. That I hope is not the case, but I really don't see them coming out and trying to go forward except on a counterattack.
So I look at it a little bit differently than you. And, I don't know how much of that Braga game was Braga and the Portuguese way of playing versus how Feyenoord necessarily want to set up in Europe. They haven't struck me over the years. And listen, I'm not going to blow smoke and say that I've watched a ton of Feyenoord over the years, but even in the European matches that I've kind of been aware of or paid peripheral attention to or watched, they haven't necessarily been a team that will sit in and truly park the bus. And I think that this manifests in some of the metrics that we typically look at. So they play very Dutch, the 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 kind of formation. They possess the ball well. I think they're averaging something like 55-56% on the season. And they take a lot of shots, like 17 per game in the Eredivisie. So, and that style of play is consistent, by the way, whether they are home or away. The metrics do not change at all. So, to me, I wonder if they see a wounded animal in Villa. This is a game that we can get on top of, that we can play our style. Oh, by the way, they don't have a single player on their roster over the age of 30. In their
Yeah.
top 11 most played players, there are only 3 over the age of 26. So these are a bunch of like young kids that I think are going to be raring to go. And I think if I'm Feyenoord, I want to get on top early. We've talked about the fact that Villa haven't necessarily played with a lot of pace or an ability to get in behind people. So I don't know that you're all that worried about Villa playing over the top. Now I don't have a ton of metrics to say that Feyenoord press high up the field, other than to say that when you look at the zones of where the ball is most often in their matches, they're one of the first teams that I've ever looked at where the middle third isn't like an overwhelmingly dominant percentage. The ball is in their defensive third only about 24% of the time, and the middle and attacking third are fairly consistently even. So I think that either says they're possessing the ball a lot, which they are in very attacking positions and kind of using those short, quick passes to get through and around. But I think that also says that they're willing to kind of press high and win the ball high up the pitch so that it stays in those attacking zones. So I think, unlike you, I actually expect Feyenoord to kind of come out and try and really put their mark on this game from the
We'll
opening
see.
kick.
I can see why you think that. The reason I thought or think the opposite, or not, whatever. The reason I think that they may tend to sit in is because, like I said, because Villa can't break them down. And I think it's going to be a safe route to play. And I think that you can create chances against Aston Villa playing that way. So it is kind of counterintuitive, if not entirely counterintuitive, to the way they play in the league. But Eredivisie and Conference League against Aston Villa are very different. And I'm saying that as a man who, when I was younger and had more time, watched a lot of Eredivisie. It's a fun league. It's a super fun league to watch, and I really enjoy it. It's not the same level of competition.
That's fair. And, the games against Fenerbahce in Champions League qualifying, very open, would kind of support my interpretation of events.
It's true.
But, maybe they learned from that. And that's why Braga was so turgid. Braga didn't want to play and Feyenoord wasn't willing to either. And so, they might be adopting the Sir Alex Ferguson way of playing. We can go out and be really aggressive in the Eredivisie, but we're going to be a little bit more conservative in Europe. Who knows? In this league phase, we don't have enough kind of data to say if you lose your first 2 or you only get 1 point out of your first 2, like where does that kind of leave you? But obviously, also the longer they go without winning in this group stage, the more they're going to come out because they'll want to pick up some points.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, good point. Yeah.
The only other thing that I'll say is, I guess, twofold. So one thing that Who Scored calls out is that they get caught offside a lot. So you might see another high line from Villa with the high press to try and maintain that. But also look for them to kind of mirror Villa in how they attack. So 4 of their top 5 passers are their defenders and their goalie. So it's definitely going to work around the back a little bit. Makes a lot of sense for a team that has a lot of the ball. But most importantly, their left back infinitely higher than their right back in terms of passes completed. So look for them to work through that left center back and that left back as they try and work their way up the field, much like Aston Villa do Pau Torres, Tyrone Mings, Luka Dean, Ian Maatsen, as opposed to necessarily Matty Cash.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it sets up as a potentially very interesting game. I think that Villa would really like to have another result in hand here with the European schedule coming up. The more points you can pick up early, the better in this group stage. To piggyback on what you said.
In terms of players, striker Ayase Ueda, Japanese striker, up top, 6 goals already. So, very much better than anybody on Aston Villa's side. So, look for him to get the opportunities and put them away. That's 6 goals on 10 shots on target, by the way. So fairly high conversion rate for him. So let's turn to Villa, Chris. What are you expecting from Unai Emery and co?
I'm not sure, but I did put this lineup together. And I kind of based it off of the last European game and the Fulham game, which are the last two games that are played. So I looked back at both lineups and kind of tried to figure what he may do. So this isn't necessarily the lineup I would go with, but it's based on health and availability, what I think he might do. I think it'll be Marco Bizot in goal, Cash, Konsa, Powell, Matson across the back, McGinn and Kamara, because I believe I read that Kamara would be fully fit and available for that. I know he came on in the Fulham game, but so I think he'll make the start there. Gasson, and then some combination of Elliott and Buendia. The only caveat to that is I potentially see Morgan Rogers in the center because Unai Emery seems to be willing to let Rogers play through this run of form. And then Daniel Malen up top, even though Watkins got the goal against Fulham. I think because of the game on Sunday in the league, you'll see Malen get the start and Watkins on the bench.
So I think my lineup is exactly the same as yours. I do wonder if Emi Martinez is going to start now that he's healed from his injury. And Unai Emery doesn't seem inclined to typically play his backups unless absolutely necessary or playing like distinct lower level opposition. So I think it'll be Emi Martinez, Matty Cash, Konsa, Pau, Matson. I agree with you. Try and get on top a little bit more. Kamara, McGinn, Gasson. I think Elliott will start again as Unai tries to continue to get him integrated and use Emi Buendia in this super sub role. Morgan Rogers on the left, and I agree, probably Daniel Malen up top to get him a little bit of minutes. In terms of tactics and approach, I already said briefly before, I expect Villa to continue to maintain this high press, high line situation, try and catch Feyenoord off, keep the ball in their half of the field. And, you know, other than that, I think we're going to need to be organized and composed at the back. They're going to play a lot of intricate small passes and try and slip somebody in behind. Villa have shown themselves to be vulnerable to that before. So as long as we can keep the ball far away from our goal, we don't allow them to do that. But I think that it's going to be a very interesting tactical battle between two teams that want to maintain possession of the ball. And I think that's what it's going to come down to is who can kind of exert that dominance over the other.
So who do you think exerts that dominance?
Feyenoord.
What's your score?
I think it's going to be 2-1.
2-1 Feyenoord is what you say?
Yeah.
Because I'm riding high with confidence off of the Fulham game, I say 2-1 Villa.
I like that. I mean, it's certainly possible. I need a few more wins, or at least one like truly convincing one under my belt before I start picking Villa to win again.
Before we so calls you? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Just keep bringing that back, please. Chris, anything else to add?
We'll see if he calls, you know. No, I think I think we can get to our shouts out, right? We have a few shout outs to do.
Yep. So a few shout outs on the old YouTube, nothing on Twitter or Spotify. So get in there if you want to engage with us. Cedric Vidal Hoppy 2, new subscriber. Welcome to the crew. Hope you stick around. And then two of our biggest fans, usual favorites, Black Country Villain, shouts out to you. And Big Waltz hopping in there, giving Chris some kudos for his solo pod. So
somebody had to listen to
that. Someone did. So thank y'all for tuning in. Obviously, you know, anything that you want us to cover, please let us know. Any aspects of the game, players, decisions, all that kind of stuff. We're happy to do so. We'll definitely work it into the rundown. Yeah, I got nothing else, Chris. I guess Burnley on over the weekend. Not sure with Yom Kippur if we'll be able to get to a preview for that. But hopefully in the coming weeks, both of our work schedules will lighten up and we'll be able to get back to our usual twice a week cadence. So fingers crossed for that. Chris, I will talk to you soon as the week goes on, I'm sure. But love you, my friend. Love the Villa. And as always, up the Villa.
Up the European Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.